What is happening is a process of de-dollarization, led by emerging countries through significant purchases of gold. The goal is to create a parallel currency in a multipolar global economic system that is no longer dominated by the US dollar. In this video, we will explore the reasons why central banks are buying gold at this moment and which central banks are acquiring the most gold, and the close relationship between gold, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and de-dollarization. Since the end of 2022, central banks around the world have been acquiring large quantities of gold, with gold demand reaching its highest level since 1950. This macroeconomic phenomenon is worth monitoring. The massive demand from central banks for gold has risen to 4,741 tons, with central bank purchases totaling 1,136 tons over the course of the year. In 2021, central banks bought 450 tons of gold, and in 2022, they bought 1,136 tons. It is not surprising that central banks turn to gold as an investment during times when investors are fearful of geopolitical threats or rampant inflation. But why do central banks hold gold? And why do they buy it at certain times? The total value of gold in circulation is $12.5 trillion, with 17% of it held by central banks, which is clearly tracked. It is a number that can be monitored. In total, central banks hold $2.1 trillion in gold. If we talk about gold as the ultimate safe haven asset, it is interesting to understand how much gold is stored in the vaults of central banks. The United States holds about 8,000 tons of gold. Germany holds 3,300 tons, and France holds 2,436 tons. What is interesting to note is that the United States gold holdings have changed by less than 0.1%, which means that the quantity of gold in the vaults of the US Federal Reserve has remained relatively unchanged. Germany has seen a slight decrease in its reserves, and no changes for Italy. Russia has 2,295 tons of reserves, which is an increase of 443% in reserves held by the Russian Central Bank. China has seen an increase of 393%. Gold has always been an essential component of a nation's financial reserves, and this has been the case for centuries, and the interest of nations in concentrating their wealth in gold through their central banks shows no signs of diminishing. One of the primary objectives of central banks is to diversify their reserves. Central banks are responsible for national currencies, such as the euro-dollar exchange rate. This exchange rate is subject to volatility, perhaps even 15 or 20% in a year, depending on the strength of the nation's economy. If the economy is strong, interest rates are high, and as a result, the currency will be strong. But there are also times when interest rates may decrease because the economy slows down, and as a result, the currency depreciates to stimulate the economy. The central bank has various options. The first is to lower interest rates, which is called Phase 1 monetary policy, low interest rates to stimulate the economy. But when interest rates are at zero, what can be done to stimulate the economy? Printing money is the next step, which is called Phase 2 monetary policy, and this is what has happened from 2010 to 2020. This increase in the availability of money in circulation can stimulate the economy, sometimes successfully and sometimes not, but the cost is that it reduces the value of the currency. Gold, since it is not easy to extract and difficult to add new gold, has a natural protection against inflation. Additionally, gold has no credit risk, which is why it is considered a safe haven asset, as it has no counterparty risk. Gold is a globally recognized safe haven asset that has been acknowledged for thousands of years. This perception is compounded by the inverse relationship between gold and the dollar. In other words, when the dollar appreciates, gold tends to depreciate, and vice versa. So we could say that the reasons why a central bank purchases gold are multiple. One is to balance reserves of other currencies within its own balance sheet. For example, the Federal Reserve may have euros and yuan, among other currencies, in its balance sheet, which are subject to volatility. Balancing to eliminate or reduce counterparty risk. Central banks mitigate and manage this risk by converting part of these currencies into gold. Another reason central banks hold gold is for diversified exposure to the value of the dollar, as we understand that a strong dollar leads to a low gold price, and vice versa. This is particularly important for emerging countries that have debts denominated in dollars and face crises when the dollar strengthens. Supporting the price of the dollar, these are the considerations and policies at the central bank level. However, there is another phenomenon because gold does not generate monetary flows. While gold is considered a safe haven asset, it has speculative elements because there is an opportunity cost in owning it. If I buy gold, I can only profit if I find someone who will buy it from me at a higher price in the future. I cannot earn from holding gold because it does not generate monetary flows. It is important to note that the logic of a central bank does not necessarily apply to personal finances. At this moment, investors' expectations regarding the evolution of interest rates have changed dramatically compared to 2 months ago. The markets are already pricing in a reduction in interest rates starting from the summer, despite the fact that the Federal Reserve has not yet announced a reduction in interest rates and may even raise them in the next meeting in May. Currently, investors are repositioning themselves because they believe the economy is heading towards a recession, and there are also significant banking crises that we have discussed in other videos. Therefore, the Federal Reserve cannot raise interest rates as previously anticipated, but rather may lower them from the summer onwards. These are the considerations of investors. As a result, an investment that does not generate monetary flows has a lower opportunity cost, and in light of this new future scenario, it becomes more attractive. This is the reason why, as you can see in this graph, every time the Federal Reserve has stopped raising interest rates, there has always been an increase in the price of gold, precisely because the opportunity cost of holding gold changes. This graph summarizes what we have discussed. Central banks hold gold to balance foreign currency reserves and protect against inflation, which is understandable but may be difficult to comprehend, as often policy mistakes lead to excessive inflation. Finally, diversifying the portfolio, as we have understood, due to the inverse relationship between the dollar and gold. We talked about de-dollarization in another video, and these are elements of a deliberate strategy that are starting to fall into place. In fact, the BRICS countries are among the major buyers of gold. Turkey also has close relations with Russia. These nations are becoming increasingly important from a global economic standpoint. The combined economy of the BRICS countries has surpassed that of the G7 nations in terms of purchasing power parity. We are witnessing a multipolarization of the world, where there is no longer just a single dollar-centric economy, led predominantly by the United States and the West. Given the size of the emerging economies, a second global economic pole is being formed, which includes the BRICS countries and other satellite nations, and gold plays a crucial role in this multipolarization. These countries need gold to support their currencies and continue the process of de-dollarization.
While you've reached the end of the video, if you are interested in learning more about similar topics, here you will find other really interesting videos from the channel. Thanks for watching this video. Click on the like button if you enjoyed it, and do not forget to subscribe in case you didn't. See you on the next one.